everybody? Welcome into week 2 of DFS. Brand new season, brand new look here on Zilla Fantasy Elite's Adjusted Line Play Report. Again, this is the Adjusted Line Play Report presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman. Hope you enjoyed the new look. Got the green screen in the background here, but we're going to get into it. New season, this should be good. Week 2 is underway. Today's show is powered by Rain Total Body Fuel. Here we go. Looking to make it rain some cash in DFS? Tune in to the Adjusted Line Play Report from Zilla Fantasy Elite. Follow host Todd Hoffman. Well, he delivers the most accurate DFS advice in the industry and make it rain. Here we go. Today's flavor, we got white gummy bear, and we can see it kind of gets into the green screen there with the cool green colors there. Little ASMR. I don't know if that can pick it up or not, but white gummy bear, that is my favorite flavor of any energy drink out there. Thank you very much, Rain, for making it rain this season on the Adjusted Line Play Report. Kidding, folks. They do not sponsor me yet, so I'll take fun enjoyment out there. As you can see, we got a new setup here. We're going to kind of rotate into some of these overlays that we can get into. This is kind of just the intro screen, but some of the complaints I heard is I can't really see the values that are on the screen with last year's setup, so redid it, blew it up a little bit. We're really going to make some of these big for you throughout this whole season. So hopefully you can see it on the YouTube channel. If you're out there on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button. This is information on the offensive and defensive line play for DFS purposes or picking up those waiver wire ads, things like that. Go check out my Twitter at Todzilla1337. I'm going to put out a thread every single week that has all of this matchup information in it. You can use it to, put out those massive waiver wire claims for the guys that are going to pop off this week. DFS plays, start sit decisions for your dynasty and redraft leagues. This stuff is very useful. I did try recording on Thursday, however, double counted my microphone, so I had a big echo in there. Couldn't use the thing, but kind of told you the Chargers Kansas City game on Monday or Thursday Night Football. I said the Chargers offense should smash. You should see Herbert with a bunch of passing yards. You really wanted Mike Williams out there, and probably Eckler was going to get increased targets with Keenan Allen being out, and we'll get into that with some of the other players here. And also the Kansas City offense should be good as well. They should be able to move the ball somewhat decently, but the running backs were going to be the ones that you wanted to play. And really, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire have a good game. We saw McKinnon there also produce, and that was who I had in my MVP play for DraftKings there was McKinnon, and ended up 3xing my input there on the lineups that I submitted for DraftKings. So this stuff is useful, folks. It's very good. Anyway, we got 3 minutes of crappy intro there. We got a neighbor mowing the lawn in the background, so hopefully that microphone here doesn't pick it up. We're going to get this underway. We're just going to go from the top. Number 1 ranked total on the main slate. I'm also going to give you the Sunday night and Monday night on this as well, and we're going to put out a Twitter feed for you. So number 1 Vegas game total coming in is Arizona at Las Vegas, Sunday night late game here. We got 5.5 point favorites for Las Vegas at home, 28.5 point team implied total. Arizona, 23 point team implied total there as the underdogs. And really, the notes I have in this, Arizona likely going to struggle running the ball, but the pass game should be okay. So we're going to look over here for Arizona. The run blocking, number 26, and the offensive run DVOA for Arizona, number 29. Again, this is a 1-week sample, so as the season progresses, this is going to advance and get more and more accurate as we go out further and further into the season. So keep that in mind. These are all just kind of 1-game sample sizes at the moment. It'll get more accurate, but we did see Kansas City, Los Angeles Chargers. This stuff is useful. We already got actionable items that 3x our stuff on DraftKings. I believe I 2.5x'd on FanDuel all of the lineups that I submitted there. So this stuff is accurate. It just gets more accurate as the season goes on. So follow this stuff. Offensive, defensive line play, very, very important. But Arizona, 26 versus Las Vegas, number 11 on the defensive run stopping. Arizona, number 29 offensive run adjusted. Las Vegas, number 8 defensive run DVOA. That means Arizona is not going to push the ball or be able to move the ball on the ground very efficiently in this game. Connor Likely, somebody that you're going to want to avoid for that purpose. You're basically banking on a solid touchdown output from him, and maybe that's not going to be the case. So if they can't move the ball through the via the ground, they're probably going to be moving it through the air attack. So let's look at that. Arizona number 15, Las Vegas number 24. And then for the DVOA, Arizona number 18, Las Vegas number 29. That suggests that Arizona should be able to move the ball through the air. So last week we saw Greg Dortch with like 9 targets. We already have Rondale Moore kind of ruled out. And Isabella ruled out. So you're probably going to see Marquise Brown and Greg Dortch yet again in this. Ertz maybe one more week of rest, or not necessarily rest, but being able to heal off of that calf muscle. I expect him also to have a solid game in this. In his advanced age, he's probably not, getting open as efficiently as he used to. If they're going to have a little bit more time to pass the ball, I could see him garnering quite a few more targets in this particular matchup. So that's Arizona side. Let's get to the Las Vegas side. Nothing really significant standing out as far as the offensive defensive line play here, but the pass game might be successful in this. Really, I think Arizona, we just saw get destroyed. Number 32 in defensive pass DVOA against Kansas City. Likely Carr is going to end up having a good game. Just kind of depends on how Las Vegas is going to attack this or how this game flow kind of goes, and you're going to have to create that within your mind of how you think this is going to go. But again, the adjusted line play not really sticking anything out other than this offensive run DVOA number 11 versus 21 for Arizona. But really the run stopping, this part, the left part on each of these is the one that you're going to want to look at. And those are fairly even match. So again, usually when that's the case, it's just the people that you would normally expect to produce or the ones that are really good at football are going to produce. So that's Devontae Adams, that's Darren Waller, to a lesser extent. You got Hunter Renfrow there. So I expect Carr to have a decent game. The running backs are pretty much avoidable. Jacobs and all those guys, just too much of a committee and not enough offense there for them to work around to be super viable for DFS or necessarily starting in any of your lineups outside of a RB2 or desperation deep league like flex type situation. Anyway, that's Arizona, Las Vegas, number 1 total on the slate. I don't necessarily like this game just in general. I think it's going to hit the under 51.5. I don't like it in general. Even though it says Arizona might be able to move the ball through the air, Las Vegas, nothing really standing out there. I'm not sure how it's going to go, but I don't like it hitting the over of 51.5. So we'll move on. Number 2, this is kind of an ugly slate too. So number 2 is Washington at Detroit. And we'll see here. They're only a 48.5 point game total. So the number 2 ranked game here, only 48.5 point Vegas game total here. Really, we have the line. Actually, I need to fix this link there. It says 0, but I believe Detroit was 1.5 point favorites here at home versus Washington. So Washington getting a little bump as far as being the superior team, but Detroit at home, we see a 1.5 point favorite line there for Detroit. 25 point team implied total. Washington, 23.5 point team implied total. And as we get into this, Washington offense in general should be able to move the ball pretty well. Kind of look through the line here. Washington offensive pass protection number 24, but number 8 in the DVOA. 24 offensive pass protection, not very good, but we look at Detroit, they're 31, so second worst team in the league on the defensive pass rush. Even though Washington wasn't super good on there, Detroit, not that good. Washington might find themselves with a little bit more time to pass the ball, and the DVOA is really kind of standing out as a differentiator there, suggesting Washington may have a little bit more time. You're looking at the pass game being solid there. We did see Gibson get out and run some routes, which is kind of interesting, but This one, I do like McLaurin. He didn't have like a great week 1. This could be one of those spots where he gets you your 6 or 7 receptions, over 100 yards, and one of those deep ones, getting you a touchdown, maybe 2 in this particular game. But as we saw in general, Washington should be able to move the ball. Number 19, number 20 on the run blocking stuff. Detroit, number 30, number 25, also not very good. So Washington should be fine moving the ball on the ground. They should be fine in the air. I do like McLaurin in this, and I do like Gibson, actually, if they're going to be moving the ball, scoring a lot of points. And on Detroit side, we might find efficiency again running the ball. We saw that last week. Just tons and tons of efficiency running the ball between Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift. We see a number 21 offensive run blocking for Detroit, not particularly good. Washington, number 12 there, so that's kind of favoring Washington a little bit. But the run DVOA, number 3 for Detroit. Washington, number 31. That's kind of why I suggest that Detroit might be a little bit more efficient running the ball, or efficient again running the ball this week. I think they'll be fine there. And we look at the pass protection, number 12 for Detroit, number 15 for Detroit, versus a number 11 and a number 17. Really, that's kind of a wash. That suggests that Detroit probably going to be fine in the pass game. I do like their offensive line, although I think Regnow, their center, might be out. Regardless, they do have a solid offensive line there. They should be able to protect Goff. I don't think Washington's going to get after them a whole lot. So I think Detroit's also going to be able to move the ball. And what's interesting here is we should watch out for the pace. If you look on the bottom here, offensive neutral pace situation, Washington number 12. Detroit actually number 1 in offensive pace in neutral situations. If you're expecting a close game, Vegas is expecting a close game. Number 1 offensive pace for Detroit, number 12 for Washington, both top 12 teams. We should see a high pace there if it's close. Let's say Washington's leading. If you think that's the case, their offense, when they're leading by 7+, Washington 10th best pace in the league. Detroit offensive pace when trailing by 7+, 19, a little bit below average there, but not bottom of the barrel when they're trailing by 7. Let's say Detroit's having a good game. Their offensive pace when leading by 7+ is 3rd in the league. And Washington, when they're trailing by 7's at number 19, the same as Detroit there. So again, not great, a little bit below average, but not terrible. So I think pace of play in this could get very interesting, especially if it's a back and forth game, keeping it close like Vegas expects it to be. I do feel like this one might actually hit the over, and this could be a sneaky play for some DFSers out there. I think you could stack Goff or Wentz in this particular matchup with their pass catchers, including the running backs there for Detroit. And I think you could have a lot of success. You got bringbacks on both sides. You got Terry McLaurin on Washington. You got Gibson. You got Swift. DJ Chark could have a good game. Amon-Ra St. Brown. You got a lot of bringbacks in this game. I just like this in general for DFS. You're probably going to want a lot of pieces, even if you're not stacking this game. Grab those as your secondary stacks. You know, put a Gibson in there and bring it back with a Chark or an Amon-Ra St. Brown, or put Swift in there and bring it back with McLaurin if you're not stacking the quarterbacks in this matchup. That's how you can get some exposure to this game and have it correlated and have, you know, a very successful week in DFS. So watch out for that Washington-Detroit game. I do like that one more so than the number 1 ranked game in this particular matchup, this particular slate. Sorry. We're going to move on to the number 3 slate for the main, or number 3 game on the main slate, and that's Atlanta at the Los Angeles Rams. That is a Sunday night late game, which the Sunday night one held number 1. Now it's holding number 3. And as I said before, it was kind of a disgusting week. This is number 3 on the week, and the Vegas game total is only 46.5 total points. Typically, when you start getting that low, you only want like maybe one piece, a stacking correlation of some sort into that particular matchup. And you want to attack those ones that are 48, 49, 50, you know, upwards of 54, 55 on some of those really juicy matchups that, you know, expect to have some fireworks. Once you get down 46.5, like this game total, a lot of times you're like, I'll just grab one piece from that to, you know, kind of fill out my roster. And we see this as number 3 on this particular slate. So keep that in mind. Could be a disgusting, low-scoring overall fantasy output for a lot of your teams this week. With that in mind, Los Angeles are 10-point home favorites against Atlanta. I strongly believe that this is a get-right game for the Rams, but we're going to start on the Atlanta side. I just think they're going to struggle with moving the ball in general. We kind of look offensive pass protection number 20 versus the Rams number 8. I think they're mismatched there, even though the DVOA says otherwise. Again, these are 1 week sample sizes for these DVOAs. They could swing very quickly. This one could be highly affected by the Buffalo game, but the pass rush kind of takes into the situations and has an algorithm based off of what the down and distance were and what should be expected. It's actually said the Rams weren't too bad in the defensive pass rush against Buffalo, even though they got scored on and all that stuff. So that one's a little bit lower. I think you're going to see Los Angeles Rams dominate here on the offensive pass protection, getting after Mariota. It could lead to a few more, rush attempts or scrambles for Mariota, which might be good for his fantasy value, but kind of gross in general. And we look at the offensive run blocking for Atlanta, number 20 versus number 6. That's even worse than the pass side. They are number 8 in the offensive run DVOA, but the Rams are number 1 there. So really, I just think Atlanta's going to struggle moving the ball. You're probably not going to want Pitts. He's too high priced in DFS. You're not going to want any real pieces in this particular matchup on the Atlanta side. I don't think it's going to be good for them. Mariota, like I said, might have a few more rush attempts. He had 12, I believe, last week, which is a pretty high amount for 72 yards. You could see that continue. I just don't see the touchdowns coming in Atlanta. 18 team implied point totals from Vegas. Again, a low point total just in general for this game. A lot of it's not going to come from the Atlanta side, according to this. Full fade for me on most of these players, unless you have to absolutely start like a Cordero Patterson. You're going to put Pitts in your dynasty lineups. But hey, if you're in a weird league where you got 2 stud tight ends and you only need to start one, maybe avoid Pitts this week. Anyway, let's move on to the Rams. Again, I think they are a get-right situation this particular week. Offense might find it a lot easier against Atlanta's defense than they did Buffalo last week on Thursday night. And really, this one gets really interesting for tournaments. 28.25 team implied total for the Rams suggests that they're going to score a lot of points despite the low Vegas game total in general. But offensive pass protection, number 7 for the Rams, number 32 for Atlanta. Again, I think this DVOA is affected heavily by this 1 game sample size against the best defense in the league, the Buffalo Bills. They're a solid team. Rams just couldn't keep up. Their offensive line's kind of in flux with some people leaving in the offseason. But they're suggested, hey, the Atlanta was not very good in the pass rush. Rams were actually pretty decent at pass protection despite what you saw on Thursday last week. So I think Rams are going to have plenty of time to throw the ball. This is where it gets interesting. A lot of people, Allen Robinson, he is a tournament play this week. He could have a bunch of targets. I know Cooper Kupp gets open at will. When you're getting pressured as the quarterback and you don't have much time, Kupp is going to be open and he's going to be in a spot. You have that connection. Your mind's like, oh, I got to get it out, Kupp. When you're new into that system and you haven't had but just like a few months of off-season work with each other, you're probably avoiding that particular person in that situation and just going to what you know is going to work, which is why Kupp saw so many targets last week. I really think if the Rams have a bunch of time here, you're going to see Allen Robinson with a lot more targets, and he is a tournament DFS play for sure this week. I could see him getting a bunch of targets based off of this. We also look at the offensive run blocking. Number 6 for the Rams, number 29 for Atlanta. DVOA is pretty close there, 30 versus 32. Really heavily favored, I believe, for the Rams in this as well. And what gets interesting, if the Rams are going to be up, I project they will. They're just going to score at will, I think, on Atlanta. Atlanta won't be able to keep up. This is maybe a get-right game for Cam Akers. Let's say they get out to a big lead. They're probably, I think it sounds like Akers must have some sort of personality issue or work ethic issue that's keeping him away from the field, at least in week 1, with the coaches and the other players there. I don't think it's necessarily a talent concern or an injury with his Achilles concern. I think it's just the way he's been behaving maybe in the offseason. If that's truly the case, I don't think he's going to be out on the field as much as we'd like in the beginning of this game, but the Rams get out to a huge lead. The coaches are like, hey, we're in a big lead. Let's give Akers his chance, see what he can do. We'll salt away the clock and pound him into oblivion. I could see Akers having a big game. So really, the tournament plays for me, Robinson and Akers are very, very interesting. I think they could win people some money in DFS, some large amounts of money in DFS. There's going to be almost no one on them. The Rams should project to be one of the top scoring teams on this slate, and Akers and Robinson could be the beneficiaries of 2 or 3 of those touchdowns this week. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be on Cup. A lot of people are going to be transitioning to Henderson. I believe they're almost the same salary on a lot of these sites. So look into that. Get a little bit different off of this particular matchup. I don't think you're going to want to game stack this, but pull in an Akers, pull in a Robinson to kind of fill out that one-off part of your lineup. So keep that in mind. That should be very, very interesting for DFS. I do like those 2 particular pieces in tournaments a lot. Let's go up to the number 4 particular matchup for this game slate on week 2. And it's Indy at Jacksonville, with Indianapolis 3.5-point road favorites going into Jacksonville there. A 45.5-point game total from Vegas. Again, this is actually tied for 4th. There's another game with 45.5-point game total here. But Indianapolis, let's get into theirs. They should be able to move the ball relatively well in this game, the run game especially. We see run blocking for Indianapolis, number 7 versus Jacksonville, 23. JT, a smash in cash games for DFS this week. He should have a monster game. But we go over to the pass protection, number 13 for Indianapolis, number 27 for Jacksonville. I think that suggests Indianapolis will also have plenty of time to throw the ball. It could get interesting there with some of their backups. Pittman probably going to have another good game. But you could see Paris Campbell or Ashton Dulin, who got 6 targets last week, continue kind of their target success if they're getting a bunch of time to throw the ball. Some of those deep passes might go Paris Campbell's way, Ashton Dulin's way. Should be kind of interesting on that end. I just think this is a JT game. I think Indianapolis should be able to perform pretty well against Jacksonville on offense, move the ball pretty well. Should be just fine on offense for those purposes. Where it gets interesting is in Jacksonville. Again, this is another game I like for tournaments, for DFS. Pass protection should be really good, or pretty good, for Jacksonville in this particular matchup, and it's likely going to be how they're going to move the ball. So we see number 10 offensive pass protection versus Indianapolis, number 25. I think that is a significant matchup. Jacksonville, I believe, is going to have a ton of time to be able to pass the ball. The run blocking, looks like Indianapolis will be able to maintain that pretty well. Don't expect the run game to be super efficient. James Robinson, Travis Etienne, they're probably going to split the work there. Just keep an eye. I'm probably avoiding that particular aspect of the game and looking more for the Indianapolis run game and then the Jacksonville pass game to bring it back. And I think that's where you're going to get some pretty good pieces in a low game total, supposedly. I think you're going to see Jacksonville move the ball well through the air. You're going to look at Trevor Lawrence as a very, very good and sneaky, likely low-rostered quarterback in this particular matchup. He's got good stacking options. We saw Kirk have a very good week last week. I think that continues. You're looking at Zay Jones. If you're going to double stack him, Zay Jones or Marvin Jones could also see pretty solid weeks there for Jacksonville. Don't be surprised if Travis Etienne maybe runs a few routes and scores a few touchdowns on those routes that look like they're trying to get him involved in that aspect. Last week, dropped one, and then Trevor Lawrence missed him on 2 potential, easy walk-in touchdowns last week. So Travis Etienne could be another interesting tournament play. But I like Lawrence and I like his pass catchers in this particular matchup. Put a little JT on the other side and watch those fantasy points rack up in this particular matchup. Another one of those excellent ones for tournaments, and then JT is, I believe, a smash in your cash lineups. The other game that's tied with them for the 4th highest total on the slate is Houston at Denver. And as we kind of switch the scenes here, we're going to scroll on down. Houston at Denver. We have Denver as 10-point home favorites and a 27.75 team implied total. Houston at 17.75, one of the lowest, and a 45.5 Vegas game total there, again tying them for number 4 on the week. So Houston's end, likely going to need to be passing the ball to be successful in this particular matchup. The run game is just bad. Number 32 offensive run blocking unit, worst in the league, versus Denver, actually number 24, not very good. That I think they'll be able to stop Houston just fine in the run game there. The DVOA suggesting that will be the case. So Houston likely going to have to pass the ball. Let's look at that end. Number 22 offensive pass protection, not great, but Denver, number 18, not really getting after the quarterback and getting those sacks. Could be a little interesting there. Playing Seattle, they weren't able to get home and get those. So Davis Mills might find himself with a solid amount of time to pass the ball. Offensive pass DVOA, number 10 versus Denver's number 20. I think that's how Houston's going to move the ball. We'll probably see Brandon Cooks with another solid game. And we did see Nico Collins last week maybe get a little extra targets. It was good for kind of your dynasty matchups. If you're in big dynasty leagues, I think Nico Collins is somebody that you could probably put into your lineup. I don't necessarily trust the tight ends. It's a three-way committee there. We saw O.J. Howard score those touchdowns maybe this week. Those go to Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins instead. I think you can avoid the run game. Rex Burkhead could definitely see a bunch of additional targets if you think Denver is going to get home against Houston on that offensive pass or on the defensive pass rush. Maybe Rex Burkhead ends up with a bunch of targets again. But keep that in mind. It looks like Houston's just going to have to pass the ball in order to move it. Run game is not very good. And then on the Denver side, again, they may find passing the easiest way to move the ball, just similar to Houston there. Denver, number 18 in the offensive run blocking, number 25 for Houston and stopping the run. Not a huge mismatch there. Denver should be okay running the ball. But then on the passing, number 21 for offensive pass protection, number 23 for the defensive pass rush on Houston. I think Denver will be fine being able to pass the ball. Pass DVOA, number 6 for Denver versus number 15 for Houston. I think that's going to end up being how Denver moves the ball. I do expect them to score a lot of points, but with Gordon and Javonte Williams kind of splitting their work, I don't expect either of them to necessarily have this huge breakout sort of opportunity in this game. I think if Denver gets up big, you might actually see Melvin Gordon kind of salt the game away and they keep Javonte Williams fresh for when they inevitably, hopefully, make the playoffs with this particular squad. I think they have legit Super Bowl chances, and I think that's how they're thinking in their mind. And everything that the coaches said in the offseason was basically, hey, we need to split the work done by these two particular running backs. It's going to be a committee. We need to keep them fresh, essentially, for the playoffs. So keep that in mind. I think that's going to be the case for the running backs, and you might actually see Melvin Gordon with one of those better fantasy outputs this week over Javonte Williams. And people are going to see this matchup and probably think, hey, the running backs are a smash. I think a way to get different in some of those DFS tournaments is to go attack the pass game in this. They didn't look particularly great against Seattle, but that could change against Houston. So keep that in mind. We're going to go to number 6 on the slate, which is Miami at Baltimore. So we'll scroll up to Miami at Baltimore. This is the top one on our list here. And really, they're number 6 after those two, and we're already down to 44.5 point Vegas game totals. Kind of disgusting there. So let's get into this game. 3.5 point home favorites for Baltimore, 24 point team implied total. Miami, the underdogs at 20.5 going into Baltimore. Number 6 ranked game total for this week. On Miami's end, probably won't run very well in this, but they're going to need to move the ball through the air. We see the offensive pass protection at number 19 for Miami, Baltimore at 30, so bottom 3 team there for Baltimore at getting after the quarterback. We should see some time for Tua to make some of those passes. Did see the pass game be pretty successful last week. We get into the offensive run blocking, Miami number 30, so a bottom 3 team there versus Baltimore run stopping at number 1. I don't think Miami's going to be able to run the ball very well. You can look at Chase Edmonds in this particular matchup and say, hey, he's probably not going to get a ton of rushing yards. You're hoping that Miami's maybe playing from behind. Maybe Baltimore gets after the quarterback a little bit more and he gets involved more in the pass game. I just don't think the run game is going to be very successful for Chase Edmonds this week. This is where it gets interesting. Let's say Chase last week, kind of a blah game, didn't do bad, didn't do great. Comes into this week, it's also not looking very good for him to throw up a ton of fantasy points. Hey, if he has another like blah game, that's where you can go attack in like these seasonal leagues. If you're in a full PPR league, in your dynasty leagues, very, very interesting 2-game start. Hey, he's not looking so great. Go send out those trade offers, buy him on the low if he has a poor or blah kind of game in week 2. As far as the offense for Miami on the pass game is concerned, Tua probably viable as a starter in your 2 QB or super flex leagues. And then Tyreek Hill and Waddle, probably the only pass game options that you're even remotely interested in this particular matchup. Tight ends aren't really getting involved. Gesicki, I think, had 1 target, 1 catch, 6 yards, something like that. He's pretty much out of your rosters for the rest of the season. Interesting part there, he is on just the last year there in Miami. He's playing under the franchise tag. I think in Dynasty, he's a perfect buy low candidate after the season. He's probably going to be abysmal this year. Go buy him at the end of the season or maybe week 12 when somebody's angry and hasn't produced at all. Go send out a buy low offer on Mike Gesicki and watch him dominate next year as he gets into a team that actually utilizes his skill set better than Miami's going to do this year. As far as Baltimore is concerned, they might need to get the ball out quickly, actually. This could lead to some running back targets increase. We got news, J.K. Dobbins questionable. I think they keep him out another week. I don't think even if he plays, he's going to be on a snap count. He's just going to have some sub packages, and I don't think they're going to ask a lot from him, even if he does play, although I don't think he will. Number 29 on the offensive pass protection for Baltimore versus Miami, number 4. I think that's a huge mismatch. I think Miami might be after Lamar pretty good. Again, the running back targets and the tight end targets are probably going to be the ones that increase in this. Kenyon Drake might be a very sneaky play in DFS. Keep that in mind. He could see quite a few targets if Miami's getting after Lamar Jackson. A lot of times, too, with these mobile quarterbacks, you're going to see, hey, they can get after him. He's just going to scramble more on the designed passing plays and just get out of the pocket and scramble for a few yards. You could see, Lamar with 10, 12, 13 rush attempts in this particular game, scrambling for his life. On the offensive run blocking, like I said, it's not going to be very good. It's number 29 for Baltimore, number 16 for Miami. Don't expect them to run the ball very well, but they could see an increase in targets, probably going to offset Kenyon Drake profiles more than Mike Davis as the pass catching back in that particular offense, but kind of tough to say. Mike Davis can catch the ball as well. That'll do it for the number 6 ranked game. Let's go to number 7, which is Tampa Bay at New Orleans, and we see they're at 44 points on their game total. This is Tampa Bay again at New Orleans. Vegas line is -2.5, so we have Tampa Bay as 2.5 point road favorites. 23.25 team implied total for Tampa Bay. New Orleans 20.75. We'll start there with Tampa Bay. The rush DVOA looks good, but it might just be how they attack New Orleans. We've got a lot of injuries there to the wide receivers. Pretty much everyone's got some sort of injury designation for Tampa Bay there. They're already ruled out Godwin. We had Gage with some issues. We had Julio with some issues. We had Mike Evans with some issues. Everyone's kind of banged up, but what does that mean? Hey, number 1 offensive pass protection for Tampa Bay. That's very good for their likelihood for Tom Brady to have some time. New Orleans actually, though, number 6 in the defensive pass rush. They might be able to get home. Maybe Tampa Bay has a little less time than they think, which could mean more dump-offs to Lenny Fournette. Offensive run blocking, number 5. New Orleans, number 3 at stopping the run. Again, that's strength on strength, offensive, defensive line play. The DVOA for Tampa Bay on the run is a 10 versus 27 New Orleans. That's why I say, hey, maybe that's just how they end up running the ball. We saw Leonard Fournette rack up those fantasy points last week. Never really got into the end zone, but had a lot of volume. I think you're going to see more of the same this particular week. I think he's going to get a lot of rush volume, and you might see quite a few dump-offs if New Orleans is getting after the quarterback there. For the defense for Tampa Bay here looks good too, and we'll get into that here. New Orleans, likely not much time to throw. Camaro dump-offs maybe in this particular matchup. Maybe we'll see some tight end play. It gets a little weird with the way that they've been kind of using Taysom Hill in their games, but number 23 in the offensive pass protection for New Orleans versus 16 for Tampa Bay. Not a huge discrepancy there, but Tampa Bay number 1 in the defensive pass DVOA. New Orleans number 14. Jameis Winston likely to make some mistakes, just the way he kind of plays the game. Could get a little interesting there. But the offensive run blocking for New Orleans, number 27 versus Tampa Bay, number 5. Don't expect New Orleans to run the ball very well. They're probably going to be passing a lot more. And then Tampa Bay, I think, can get after the quarterback. And if they're leading, I think that could lead to some Jameis Winston mistakes, some Jameis Winston sacks. And that's why I say Tampa Bay could be a good play in this particular game. Not super interested in anyone on the New Orleans side other than possibly Kamara, but he's expensive in DFS. Put him into your starting lineups as you drafted him. Just temper your expectations on the ceiling unless he's going to see a bunch of targets in this particular matchup, which he very may well if Tampa Bay is getting him under pressure. We'll head over to the 8th ranked game here, which is Carolina at the Giants. This one's a little bit interesting. For Carolina, really nothing standing out. It just might be a little bit easier to pass without the Cleveland defense. Again, I come in here saying this is a 1 week sample size for the DVOA type things. Carolina is playing a very stout Cleveland defense, so these things could potentially change. As the season goes on, I don't think Carolina maybe is as bad as advertised with that Cleveland defense coming after them. So offensive pass protection for Carolina, number 27. Giants, number 21, the defense pass rush. A little bit favor for the Giants there. Run blocking, number 25 for Carolina. The Giants, 31st. Really what this is suggesting, Carolina, average to a little bit below average amount of time to pass the ball. Likely Christian McCaffrey type dump-offs. Not really sure. I didn't look at the routes that were being run by Carolina last week, but DJ Moore versus Robbie Anderson, who's kind of running those shorter routes. I know most of Anderson's fantasy output came on a 75-yard touchdown. So if he doesn't do that, maybe DJ Moore gets in there, gets a little bit more work. Otherwise, CMC and DJ Moore could be the ones that you want. Probably avoiding this game in the quarterback situation for Carolina. Do not get Baker. And on the New York Giants side, they're likely going to be under pressure, which means more Barkley targets. We saw Barkley last week. Oh, man, he is back. I think he's going to be the number 1 guy running back. If he maintains health, he's going to be the number 1 running back this year. And really, offensive pass protection for the Giants, number 14. Carolina, defensive pass rush, number 3. I think Carolina's defense could be a sneaky play. They're going to be cheap, very low rostered in tournaments. So Carolina defense in DFS, very sneaky. They're number 7 in stopping the run and number 31 for the Giants in the offensive run blocking. They're not very good run blocking, which means Barkley likely not going to have a ton of room to operate as, running back, maybe bust one out. He's got the talent to do that, but it's going to come in the form of passing the ball. And I think if they're going to be under pressure, that's a Sterling Shepard game, and that's a Barkley game. And those are the 2 people that I'd be interested as one-offs in DFS. I think Sterling Shepard and Barkley. Obviously, you're starting Barkley in pretty much every other format that you have start-sit decisions, but Sterling Shepard could see quite a few targets in this if they're under the way. And the Carolina defense, if you're in tournaments or some league that's got a lot of defensive starters, something like that, get the Carolina guys in there. I think they're going to have a good week this week. As far as that's concerned, we're going to head over to the number 9 game, which I believe is a Sunday night game, Cincinnati at Dallas. This one looked juicy heading into the season. With Dak Prescott out, it now looks like a joke. Let's get back into the big spread there. Cincinnati at Dallas. Cincinnati coming in as 7-point road favorites over Dallas in the Cooper Rush-led offense there. So Cincinnati 24.5 point team implied total. Dallas 17.5, one of the lowest in the slate. Again, this is the 9th ranked at 42 Vegas game total. The interesting thing here, Cincinnati likely going to be under pressure. Actually, Dallas pass rush not too bad. It's actually pretty solid there, which makes it interesting for Mixon and Hurst this week. Especially if Higgins doesn't play, Boyd is a good option this week as well. If this is going to be the case, so we have Cincinnati number 31 in the offensive pass protection, Dallas number 12. They should be able to get after the quarterback. I think Burrow's going to be dumping it off to Mixon. He's going to be dumping it off to Hurst. And Boyd, especially if Higgins isn't there, should have a solid game as well to receive those quicker targets. As far as offensive run blocking, Cincinnati number 15, Dallas number 13. Pretty much a wash there on the run blocking side. I think Cincinnati is going to want Dallas in this particular matchup, but they're going to struggle on the offensive side with having to get the ball out quick. I think this is a monster Mixon opportunity game. I wouldn't be surprised to see him with 22 rush attempts and 6 or 7 targets in this game. I think he is a viable cash play option. Not sure how popular he's going to be in DFS this particular week, but as far as tournaments are concerned, he might be kind of low rostered in those tournaments, but somebody to keep an eye on. I do think Cincinnati defense is in play as well with Cooper Rush on the other side. Dallas not looking good last week, but high volume game for Mixon, and I think he's got a high target game as well coming his way. Keep in mind if Higgins is out to put in Boyd. Otherwise, I don't see this matchup really getting into a shootout. Don't want too many pieces outside of a one-off. Hey, get Boyd as a cheap option, Mixon as a solid cash play or tournament play with a monster volume probably coming in. Good to go. Dallas side might find the air attack a little bit more efficient than the run game here, but kind of avoiding with the quarterback Cooper Rush there. Number 9 offensive pass protection versus Cincinnati number 19. Maybe he has some time to throw the ball. Might lead to some hyper targeting of CeeDee Lamb there, but a lot of times when the backup quarterback comes in, they have a lot of chemistry with some of these wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 types that they've been practicing with on a week in and week out basis. That could be Semi Fehoko, one of those type of guys, Noah Brown, things like that, who maybe weren't getting those first team rep opportunities in camp and in these practices. Offensive run blocking for Dallas, number 2, really good, but Dallas number 9 on the defensive run stopping, as well as a number 5 defensive run DVOA. So I think Cincinnati will be able to maintain the run game. It just gets a little interesting on the pass game. If they got some time, you could see hyper targeting of CeeDee Lamb or maybe one of these backup wide receivers, wide receiver 3 or 4 on Dallas's team, who's got that chemistry with Cooper Rush in those practices. You might see that kind of on display in this particular matchup. But one in general, I'm kind of avoiding on the Dallas side, and then just kind of looking at the Cincinnati players, especially Mixon in this particular matchup. We got 2 more at tied for number 10. One of them is the Seattle-San Francisco game, and then the other one is New England at Pittsburgh, and the Jets-Cleveland is the worst on the main slate here, and we'll get those 3 out of the way before we get to those island games, Sunday night and Monday night games. So Seattle at San Francisco. Seattle likely going to be under siege in this from the San Francisco defense, which just means quicker passes are going to be necessary, more tight end targets, more running back targets. Could this be a Penny target week? Perhaps. He's certainly capable in that particular aspect, but Seattle, a lot of tight end targets. They don't necessarily like Fant is in there. Will Disley score the touchdown? Colby Parkinson, I don't know if he scored a touchdown, but I think there's a 3-headed monster there in Tennessee as far as the tight ends are concerned. It's seemingly always been that way for the most part with Pete Carroll there. So you might see it kind of spread around there. If they're under a siege, you might not see a whole ton to DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett deep, just keeping it underneath. I don't particularly see any blow-up plays from Seattle on the offensive side. Number 25, offensive pass protection. San Francisco, number 5, defensive pass rush. San Francisco, number 2, defensive run stopping. Seattle, number 14 on the run blocking side. Again, I don't see Seattle being super efficient on offense. Not going to want a ton of pieces there, but they could be under siege. Lower targets, lower average depth of target for the people, higher running back and tight end targets. On the San Francisco side, defense obviously in play if they're getting after Seattle, if you expect them to be winning. Vegas does. They're 9-point home favorites for San Francisco. San Francisco 24.75 team implied points. Seattle 15.75 team implied points. The stone cold worst, I believe, on the slate this week for a 40.5 point Vegas game total tied. As I had said earlier with New England and Pittsburgh. San Francisco offensive side, number 17 in the offensive pass protection versus number 29 on Seattle. That's solid. And then San Francisco run blocking, number 11. Seattle, number 8 in stopping the run. Again, I don't think San Francisco is going to be super successful running the ball. It'll be interesting to see how they utilize Jeff Wilson versus Tyrion Davis-Price versus Jordan Mason, the rookie, versus Trey Lance, the quarterback. Probably don't want anyone in that particular running back room. I'd be more interested in Trey Lance he had 28% of the team rushes, I think. Team rush attempts. Thank you to Dwayne McFarland for that stat. But offensive pass protection, they should have some time. I think this is a good Ayuk game, to be honest. Again, avoiding the running back room. Besides the three-headed monster maybe that you can have in the running back room, you got Debo and you got Lance stealing targets. Just moving forward, avoid, I think, the running back room. It's not going to be fruitious, I think, for a lot of people. But offense still might struggle. Let's just say they might have time. We haven't seen Lance necessarily put it all on tape. Super good. They could struggle in this. This could be a closer game than you expect. But if they're going to move the ball and they're maybe not super efficient on the ground between the 5 people that might be touching the ball, running it, the deep targets to Ayuk could be interesting. So even though it's a low Vegas game total, Ayuk, you might get one of those deep bombs. You already saw it in the monsoon game. He had a long completion there. I expect if San Francisco's got time, they could connect on 1 or 2 of those particular deep pass plays, and I think Ayuk would be the beneficiary of there. Really kind of avoiding this game outside of maybe Trey Lance and Brandon Ayuk. Don't necessarily like anyone else in this matchup. So we'll move up to the New England-Pittsburgh game. Again, this is a Sunday early game. And we have a 40.5 point game total, just like the last one. 2.5 point road favorites for New England going into Pittsburgh. On the New England side, you can see a lot of pressure. But without Watt, maybe not. We'll see. Watt, again, out with that pec injury. We have number 8 offensive pass protection for New England. So why would they be under pressure? Pittsburgh, number 2 in the defensive pass rush. They still have a lot of good defenders on their team. TJ Watt out, though. So this might be a matchup positive for New England, even though the DVOA, number 25, versus Pittsburgh's number 5. We'll see on that. New England run blocking, number 9, versus Pittsburgh, number 19. DVOA pretty close there. New England kind of struggling on offense there. Again, they could see some pressure on defense, but maybe not with Watt there. If they're going to be super successful, run blocking 9 versus 19, and then 8 versus whatever Pittsburgh ends up being without TJ Watt. Could be interesting. Maybe they move a little bit through the air, maybe a little bit on the ground. Three-headed monster in New England. 33%, 33%, 25% for the running backs there. Ramondre Stevenson should see an increase in workload with Ty Montgomery being out, but that remains to be seen what that looks like. On the Pittsburgh side, likely won't run all that well. We did see an injury with Harris. He's been cleared, but number 28 versus New England 22, and then 27 on the DVOA side for Pittsburgh versus 15 on New England. Yeah, I don't think Pittsburgh's offensive line is very good. Najee Harris probably going to struggle or be very inefficient on the ground. Got the backup UDFA there. Jaylen Warren, if you're interested. Would not start him, would not put him anywhere in DFS lineups because I think they're going to struggle on the ground there. Offensive pass protection for Pittsburgh, number 11 for New England, number 14 on the pass rush. That's kind of a wash. Pittsburgh probably going to have to move the ball through the air. Deontay Johnson, probably the only one that you're going to want in the pass game. He's going to get the targets. He's just a baller. He's good, and probably the only one you're going to want to take into consideration here. And that does it for the two tied for 10th place final game on the main slate that we're going to go over. The worst game total here is New York Jets at Cleveland, and we have Cleveland as 6.5 point home favorites, 23 team implied points for Cleveland, 16.5 for the Jets, 39.5 Vegas game total for the worst on the slate. But surprisingly, I think there's some good fantasy plays in this particular matchup, and we'll get into kind of watching the pace on this as well. For the Jets, going to be under pressure passing. That just means increased running back targets. Carter, Breece Hall, probably going to see a massive amount of targets again. Wouldn't be surprised if both of them are 6+ targets in this particular matchup, as Cleveland is good and gets after the quarterback. Probably going to see a lot more dump offs. Probably means Conklin also in play underneath. Watch out for that. I don't expect the Jets to be keeping up with Cleveland. I feel like they're going to be behind and in pass mode yet again. How many Flacco attempts there's going to be remains to be seen. Run blocking, number 22 for the Jets, number 14 for Cleveland. So not a very good situation there. I think those running backs are in play, though, because they should get a lot of targets, especially in your PPR leagues. So keep that in mind. Run blocking, okay-ish, but the running back targets is where you're going to do it. Wide receivers, let's let that shake out. Not a ton to glean from week one, other than that it got spread around quite a lot. I don't think we're going to see that be the case moving forward. I think Elijah Moore is the best one in that wide receiver room, but can't really trust him this week. As far as Cleveland's concerned, defense obviously in play if they're getting after the Jets. Could be a lot of sack strips, bad throws on Flacco's parts, a lot of sacks. Cleveland definitely in play. They're going to be popular for DFS, but if you have a Cleveland defense in your redraft or dynasty leagues, certainly start them this week. Running the ball might be more efficient, and I think this is going to be a Chubb game. I expect Cleveland to get up. Offensive pass protection is number 30, Jets number 22. Cleveland more of a run-first team anyway, led by Jacoby Brissett. Don't like the pass game this particular week. Let's look at this run game. Number 1 for Cleveland, number 21 for the Jets. That's a huge mismatch, even though DVOA is tied at 4 each. I expect Cleveland to be able to run the ball very efficiently. It's going to be Chubb, and this might be finally the Chubb game where he, goes for 24 rush attempts, 180 yards, 2 touchdowns. That could be his potential this week if we don't get Kareem Hunt stealing those particular things. Cleveland, even though they're 30th in offensive pass protection, that means maybe they get a little extra pressure. It could be some more Kareem Hunt targets as well. He's kind of a thorn in the side of Chubb's upside, but we'll see. This one's kind of interesting. If they don't utilize Hunt and Chubb just kind of runs wild, you could see him with a massive game this particular week, which should be interesting to watch. And as I said, watch the pace. Expect Cleveland to be up, but neutral situation. The Jets number 8, Cleveland number 20 in their pace of play. But as far as when they're trailing, number 3 for the Jets in offensive pace when they're trailing by 7+. I expect that to be the case. Cleveland, when they're leading by 7+, is actually number 7 in offensive pace, number 5 in offensive pace when they lead by 7+. So that's a 5 and a 3. They're one of the quickest teams. If Cleveland's leading, 5th in the league currently. Jets, when they're trailing by 7+, number 3. You could see this kind of end up in a more back and forth, higher pace game. Maybe you see quite a few targets from Carter and Breece Hall this week. Maybe you see Chubb with a massive amount of volume this week as that pace kind of plays. That also plays into effect for Cleveland. If Jets are playing fast, Cleveland, more opportunities for sacks, more opportunities for turnovers, things like that. Keep that in mind. And that's going to do it for the main slate. So keep all that stuff in mind. All that stuff is main slate. We're going to get into these island games now, which we'll start off with the Sunday night game, Chicago at Green Bay. And we're looking at a island game, so these ones get a little interesting for DFS, but we can kind of talk about it in that sense and in your redraft dynasty type sense as well. So again, Chicago at Green Bay. Green Bay 10-point Vegas favorites at home, 25.75 team implied total. Chicago's 15.75 with a Vegas game total of 41.5. Chicago side, oh boy, I think they're going to struggle moving the ball. Defense might get home to Rodgers, though. Something to write home about, at least in terms of DFS or starting some deeper league defenses. Number 32 in offensive pass protection, though, for Cleveland or for Chicago's offense. Green Bay number 20 in the defensive pass rush. Mismatch in the favor of Green Bay, not huge, but Chicago pretty bad. Offensive run blocking for Chicago, pretty bad. Number 23. Green Bay, number 26 in stopping the run. If Chicago is going to run the ball, it's probably going to be more successful with Fields than anyone else. Don't expect him to have a ton of time to throw the ball either. You might see Mooney with another kind of down game. Does he play against Jair Alexander, get shut down? Who knows? We'll see. I just expect if he's going to be under pressure, Justin Fields that is, he's probably going to have a few more scrambles. They might design a few more run attempts to keep Green Bay's defense honest. Justin Fields really the only person in Chicago that I'm particularly interested in. Again, if he's under pressure, running back targets may go up, tight end targets likely to go up as well, but those guys I'm not super interested in with a 15-point Vegas game total. Just something to keep in mind for DFS purposes. On the Green Bay side, though, probably find running the ball very efficient, especially compared to their pass game. So don't be surprised if they do just that. Number 3 in the offensive run blocking for Green Bay. Chicago, number 20 at stopping it. DVOA just as good. Number 5 for Green Bay. Number 19 for Chicago. On the offensive pass protection for Green Bay, number 6. But we see Chicago, number 1 in the defensive pass rush. Again, this could be small one-game sample versus San Francisco in the monsoon game, so this could be subject to change. We see the pass DVOA for Chicago there, number 4, and Green Bay number 22. So they might be able to get home on Rodgers. I just don't expect them to pass much. I think this is the A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones game for Green Bay. Don't be surprised if they have combined, 35, 40 opportunities between the both of them, and then they just don't pass the ball. One of those Rodgers low pass attempt, 180, 220 yards passing type game. Not going to be pretty for him, I think, anywhere where you start him, but keep that in mind. I think this is a run game for Green Bay. They're going to plow over Chicago, and I'm avoiding the pass game for the Green Bay Packers. On to Monday Night Football. We have 2 of them, Tennessee at Buffalo and Minnesota at Philly. Let's go with Tennessee at Buffalo first. Tennessee likely going to struggle moving the ball just in general. Number 26 in offensive pass protection. Buffalo's defense, as we saw, dominate the Rams. They're number 7 in the defensive pass rush. They're number 2 in defensive pass DVOA. We have Tennessee actually as number 1 in the pass DVOA there, but I think Buffalo's defense is going to overwhelm their offensive line. Should be able to get home to Tannehill, who we say throughout his career makes some pretty boneheaded plays, as you're just kind of like, what the heck is he doing? That could be the case with Buffalo, so Buffalo defense in play. Defensive run stopping for Buffalo, number 4. Tennessee, number 16 in run blocking. Probably not going to be super successful running the ball in Tennessee, so kind of avoiding Derrick Henry in this particular matchup. If you're going to do anything, Tennessee is going to be under pressure. This is an island game for DFS purposes. What I like about that aspect is the rookie over there. He looked pretty good last week, 9 targets, Kyle Phillips. If they're going to be under pressure, he gets open quick. He's going to be the one that's probably in your 5 Buffalo players, 1 Tennessee player. You're going to want Kyle Phillips and no one else on that particular side. I don't know what he's priced as far as island games. I don't know if those are out yet, but could be interesting. Kyle Phillips and 5 Buffalo players. That's what you're going to want to do to win some money on Monday Night Football. Buffalo side for offense, nothing really standing out here, and typically when that's the case, nothing, huge mismatch. It's just your people that are good at football and your studs. They usually do well, and that's really all the take home is. We have Buffalo number 2 in offensive pass protection, Tennessee's defense number 10, and then the DVOA number 4 versus number 6. It's very close, all green there. Strength on strength. Again, I think Josh Allen and Diggs probably going to be the ones that you want. And then offensive run blocking, Buffalo number 12, good, not great. Tennessee number 10, and then the DVOA 32 versus 26. Again, that's a wash. As I said, usually what I've seen when there's no real thing you can discern from the offensive line play, it ends up being the guys that are just good at football or the ones that perform in the particular game. I think for this particular setup, that's going to be Josh Allen and that's going to be Stephon Diggs. I don't expect a ton outside of that. Maybe they spread the ball around. Otherwise, if I didn't say it, Buffalo 10-point home favorites, 28.75 team implied total. Tennessee 18.75 and a 47.5 Vegas game total. Again, if it's going to be the studs, and I think Josh Allen and Diggs, hey, they could be your MVP candidate on DraftKings. Put in Diggs, stack them with Josh Allen, and maybe a couple cheap options. Bring it back with Kyle Phillips on the other side, 5-1. Suck up those profits, Final game on the Sunday night matchups, the slate for week 2 on the Monday night game here. Minnesota going into Philadelphia. Philadelphia 2-point home favorites only. 26.25 team implied total for Philly. 24.25 team implied total for Minnesota. With a 50.5 Vegas game total. Hey, I think this is going to be good for fantasy. Minnesota's pass game should dominate. Philadelphia's run game should dominate. That equals fantasy points. And hey, it's going to be probably one of the few games this week that produce points for your season-long rosters, whether that's Dynasty or Best Ball, Redraft, etc. Looking at Minnesota, moving the ball on offense through the air, number 3 in offensive pass protection. Philadelphia, number 28. Obviously in the favor there of Minnesota. They should be able to move the ball through the air. Justin Jefferson probably going to smash again. Don't be surprised if he's got another 8+ receptions for 150+ yards and at least 1 touchdown. As they say, hey, you remember picking this Jalen Reagor dude right in front of Justin Jefferson? We're going to show you what a mistake that was. Here is a bunch of Justin Jefferson in your face. Run blocking for Minnesota, number 24 versus Philly, 18. Again, that's kind of a more in the favor of Philly, even though the DVOA is a little backwards of that. I think Minnesota, main takeaway, air attack is going to be good. I like Justin Jefferson, and maybe we see some KJ Osborne as well in this particular matchup. As far as Philadelphia is concerned, we see number 16 offensive pass protection versus Minnesota number 9. They might be able to get after Jalen Hurts, but don't expect them to be passing a ton in this game, as their offensive run blocking for Philadelphia number 4, Minnesota number 32. They're number 29 in defensive run DVOA. Philadelphia number 6 in offensive run DVOA. It's going to be a smash success for Philadelphia's run game. I think that's going to be huge for Jalen Hurts. It's going to be pretty good, but they kind of had a 3-way committee there between Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell. They were kind of the people coming out of the gate, getting a lot of the offense. I think that's going to be more of the same this particular week. Maybe we see Boston Scott steal a touchdown. If this is going to be a more back and forth game, Philadelphia running, Minnesota passing, we could see again, hey, Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown, Miles Sanders rushing touchdown, Boston Scott rushing touchdown, Gainwell rushing touchdown. I think this is going to be a solid game for fantasy points. It's going to be Philadelphia's run game. It's going to be Minnesota's pass game. Interesting things that you could probably make in your island game DFS there. Watch out for that. Anyway, that's going to do it for week 2, folks. I hope you appreciated all of this information coming at you. Thanks again for watching. Hit the subscribe button over on YouTube. Give me a follow on Twitter at Toddzilla1337, at Zilla Fantasy on Twitter as well. for Zilla Fantasy Elite. And then you can, on Podbean, follow on there. Podbean, that's where the audio version goes. Thanks again for watching, everybody. Let's go win some money together. Thank you. Bye.